Welcome to Biggest Geekus. We're your hosts. I'm Randy.
I'm Joe.
This is episode 192 of our show.
Geekus.
The Geekus. And the date is Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. Wow. Oh, sorry. Did you hear that? That was something dumb. So, yeah, it was good to get back, man. Glad to be back. So
glad to have you. Maybe our viewership will go up again.
Well, the star is back.
We were waiting for you.
It should help with the star being back in the show, ready to rock.
The talent.
Yeah, the talent. Right. So, but anyway, so how was your week this week? Did you get any of the sweet dice rolling action in?
No. But that's coming up this Friday.
That's right. We got a little Horde Wars action. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in for that. So I got to level my dude up. I think I got to be level 3 now. Unless I was already level 3. I can't recall. I got to look at him. Did you level up? Did you level up this past time?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I think I did the previous.
I feel like Brian and I were a little bit ahead. I don't remember. So.
Larry might know because Larry and I are pretty close in experience points.
Exactly. But
no, I can't remember. I have to look at my sheet too.
Yeah.
But I needed to find that out from you so that I could let, because we weren't sure.
Yes, I'm playing.
And
trying to get back into the routine, man. Trying to do the things.
Right. And I'm remembering Nate's name. Todd was not wanting to have the session if you couldn't be there. He would have been fine with delaying it a week or two, just for you.
For me, I'm so touched.
You.
I'm gonna go ahead and share with people. My mother passed away a while back, and she got really sick, and I had to take care of her. And a couple weeks off, Patrick stepped in from Pontiac Games and stood up like a champ, helped out. And I appreciate that from Patrick. But I'm ready to try to get back on the saddle. And I think I'm ready to do this thing. I gamed yesterday. I was telling Joe, had a last minute wild hair Sunday night, and I called my minders group and said, hey, 4:00 on a Monday on Memorial Day, you want to do it? And I'm thinking, that ain't going to happen. Sure enough, we got everybody together. Well, everybody that could, we got enough to play, and we had a really good time. We had a bit of an epiphany. Larry Elliott's character had a bit of a tough situation, had kind of a permanent, call it a little permanent check mark against him, which is very dangerous, but I won't go into the won't bore you with too much details. Let's just say his character's struggling.
Is it an in-game epiphany for the characters?
Sort of. Sort of mechanics thing. Well, let me try to. I'll try to explain it without boring everybody. So I've said before, this is like a quantum leap game, right? Mm-hmm. And the premise of the campaign of the group, a year and a half ago, we started this game with a few guys. We wanted to try out all these. Look behind me, all these games I have, and so I have a premise where these characters work for an organization in a futuristic, dystopian, Blade Runner type world, and they get into a machine, and their personas travel to all the different worlds using super weird science. And so we get to play the core game, what I call Earth X, is Savage Worlds. But when you bamf into a world like we played Beyond the Supernatural with Palladium, we played 5th edition once, we played a game called Vanguard, you bounce into these characters, kind of like What's His Nuts in Quantum Leap. Well, there's something called bleed that I've talked about, kind of a quasi-psychic dissonance that you're
not the blood coming out.
No, it's when you can't handle being, because they found out a few months ago that they literally inhabit people in other worlds.
Okay, so they're not being given
a new body,
created things for them to inhabit. So someone used to live in that, or may still be, and when they get stuck in their head, they shunt the other personality,
or they're temporarily, and weird science and sometimes no physics. That's true. We don't try to explain too much because it's super weird. But Larry's character failed the first bleed roll. You'll know what a spirit roll is in Savage Worlds.
Yes.
If you fail that, if you roll snake eyes, you get what's called a bleed effect. and his character now has a penalty. And if it happens a couple more times, he actually can get a permanent psychosis and die from an aneurysm. Part of it is just not being able to tell the difference between which person is really there.
That sounds like isn't there a survival or there's a check that you make when you take horrific damage in that game in
Savage Worlds?
In Savage Worlds. Isn't there a death roll?
Yes, when you go past 3 wounds by the standard rule, you make a death save, and all kinds of crazy stuff can happen on that table.
Is it similar
Mostly
to that
bad.
table?
No, it's not that bad. I have just a straight, each time you snake eyes it, eventually you can get booted out. But his character was the guy who was their boss, the quest giver, if you will. Felt bad for him. Said last time, he just basically warned Larry. He said, look, he offered Larry a way out. He said, you can retire right now. I'll even pay for you to go live somewhere. Here's some money, you can retire, or you can continue being a minder. They kind of mind all these dimensions, right? Like MIND, not mine them, but pay attention to them and make sure things stay straight. But anyway, long story short, he offered that to Larry, and Larry's character is like, nah, I'm going to keep going. But if he gets another one, things get tricky. Like he's going to get you get a hindrance, and then next is psychosis, and then death. So it's not
like after you snake eyes, you make another roll to see what happens.
No, and you can't use a chip. So in this game, if you snake eye something,
no chips.
No chips. So yeah. Hey, DM Blackwall, since you're on here, I'll just tell you, I'm playing Friday, dude. I'm in. I'll be there. Are we meeting 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock on Friday?
6:30. I
6:30.
think it's 6:30.
Okay, I'll get my booty in gear.
Larry says that he may not be able to.
Right. Hope we have enough folks
not
to play.
Not positive, he says.
Right. He's got a thing. He's got to see a man about a horse. So, yeah. But anyway, that was fun. We played for a good 4.5 hours and hung out. It was cool. Good times.
Yeah. DM Blackwall, I let him know that, and everybody watching, that you would have stopped the whole show just for Randy and delayed it for him.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're willing to do that for Larry as well, but, we know probably just Randy.
He wants his number one dude there.
Yeah.
I mean, the clerics got to go down the first round of combat.
Yeah, might as well.
The campaign's ruined if I don't follow the first round of combat.
It's not a game if you're not face on the floor most of it.
Right. Yeah. I will heal you. No, I won't. So, yeah. I'm looking forward to getting my face beaten off. So, anyway, it'll be good times.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Anything else, or should we? Oh, you wanted to talk about something else with the Dungeons and Discourse video?
Okay, so we all know about the stupid figure being released by Wizards of the Coast.
Right.
Representing the Red Box Warrior. Yep. That was definitely a man that got changed to definitely a woman on purpose and very much out there.
Right.
Apparently, Wizards went and made sure that, or maybe WizKids, maybe both, went and made sure all these outlets made it very plain that they did it on purpose.
Right.
And, who cares? That's something they would do. Big deal.
Yeah.
But and it's not really a controversy. It's just annoying. So, but there is, she calls it a controversy over at Dungeons and Discourse. And I guess it kind of is. They went to all the trouble of making this press release and fomenting all of this ire one way or the other. People mad at folks like us for pointing at it and saying that's not right or that's stupid or whatever. And then the other folks.
Did I just show something dumb? I was screwing around. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah.
I'm back.
Yes, and you just screwed up your microphone too. If you yell that loud, you're
I'm back, baby.
Yeah, that's better. That's better. So all those folks who just love the fact that it's a girl and they're going to be able to buy it when it comes out are going to get, upset or disappointed, even though it's in these releases in some way or fashion or form, that they're in booster packs. You can't just buy the one figure. And the booster pack is $200.
That's for a brick of 8 of them.
Right.
Yes, that's outrageous.
So I don't know if you're going to be able to buy them, the little booster boxes individually, perhaps at some
You
point.
will. You will.
But the initial release is $200. So you have a chance to have it because there's no guarantee that it's in one of those.
Dude,
I mean, if you buy even if you buy 8 boxes, I know folks that used to buy Magic cards in the big booster boxes and figures the same way, and they were hoping to get a particular one because they heard it was in the set. And they buy a whole booster box, a whole set of them, and they're like, it wasn't in any of them. It's all randomized. And that's
look at that.
Yeah.
DM Blackwall, $80 for a brick 4 years ago. I remember when the first D&D minis came out, the painted prepackaged plastics. I bought the first several sets. We got in with friends. I remember dropping $100 and something, and I got almost the full set of the first 3 releases. It is crazy.
Right, but you can spend that same amount and get lots of repeats because it's randomized, and there's no. I know they put a little marketing speak on some of them, like guaranteed 1 rare, guaranteed 1 of this. And this is, if you get this many boxes, you're guaranteed to get this particular figure.
Right.
You know, but it's random. And on the one hand, kudos whoever thought of that because that idea has made several companies lots of money for people saying, I'm going to buy this randomized box and hope I get something I like.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. I was on the Ferris wheel for that for a while, and I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed buying the minis, and I spent, I hate to say it, I spent more than probably $3,000 on miniatures, and I'm more than, and I'm not a painter, so I'm happy to pay for those plastics. I think it was really fun trying to get something rare, but when I was first into it, I would buy the whole big giant box, drop $100, $200 and get 4 bricks, and you'd have 16 boxes or 20 something boxes to open.
You're going to get a whole run.
Yeah, and then like a couple of friends, remember Philip and John T would do that.
You guys were all into that,
and we'd get together and we'd just say, "Hey, I didn't get it. Yeah, I didn't get a Dritz. So I got 3 of them. Here you go." It was awesome, But you had to have some bucks. But I tell you what, I sure got a buttload of minis.
Right,
but now it's getting just too much, and I look at my shelf.
Considering the audience, where they won't buy a $50 book, they'd rather pay $2 to get the character class that they want.
Yes.
You think they're going to plunk down $200 for a chance to get that figure?
They're the collectors.
Those people.
I used to be kind of one of the people that was like, take a chance. I liked it. I would go in and grab a booster box and try to, if I was looking for the Orcus figure, this is a little heavier, but they'd always get you. I got some, I thought for sure I had a big demon guy who was a rare and ended up getting a big elephant with a frost giant on the back of it, which is a mammoth, which is cool, but
it wasn't
kind of a weird thing. Yeah. But I've got people like DM Blackwall came to CabinCon this year. We traded some minis, so I appreciated that. He got some good figs and I got some good figs, and I'm happy to do that anyway. And hopefully if I get out to Grand Con, which I'm feeling like I'm going to go to Grand Con this year and hang out with the Horde Wars guys, and I may even run a game for them. I told them I'd like to. We'll do some more trading. So,
yep, that's what I was just saying, Pat. Most don't want to pay for the $50, so they're hoping that they'll get a few people. They'll get a certain amount of people that will plunk down the $200 initially. But eventually, they're going to have to sell those booster boxes individually. I'm sure do they end up doing that, or do they keep those bricks together?
I think in the past they have always done that. People that bought more newer minis. I haven't bought a box of minis in 6-8 years.
Yeah.
I would say if it were up to me, I bought some of the Descent into Avernus when I was still playing 5e. That was still quite a few years ago when that came out, because I bought a bunch of those because they had all the demons and devils, and I love those figures. But I wonder, aren't they called? I think WotC is kind of shopping the whales now. They're trying the stuff they're selling. Yeah, and I was one of those. I was a big fat whale. I was doing that for a while. I had that Hand of Vecna replica thing, which by the way is super cool, but it was a waste of money. A vanity item, and I've got the Tiamat figure. But I'm finally off that what they call Ferris wheel and trying to live a little more reasonable instead of blowing all my.
As soon as you see something shiny, you go, "Hey, I gotta go get that."
I gotta have it. I got passed on 2 Kickstarters this past week that were ending that I wanted to do. I was like, nah. And I was like, I wanted to partially, but I was like, no thanks.
Yeah.
So because I already had it. So
I wonder if it will gin up some kind of fake or artificial rarity for that figure.
Well,
so if somebody gets it in a booster pack, and then they put it on eBay and say, "Hey, come get this diverse character, all of you blue hairs out there on eBay, $100 or $50."
That happens. Like I have like the colossal red dragon. I think I still have the box somewhere. If I put it in the box, even the one of mine that's been used up, it's probably a $300 figure. I could sell it, and it cost me 80 something when it came out, which I thought was outrageous back then. I think that some figures they try to do that. I think Blackwall's got the right of it. He says, I do some bulk figure purchasing to flip at conventions. Yeah,
right.
That's a good move. And Patrick, if you're a painter, you can't go wrong. He says, Patrick Demo says, at least with paying $120 for the newest Bones, you get the minis and you know what you're getting.
Right.
So Sovereign Wolf plays it crafty. Welcome, Sovereign Wolf. I use pawns. Yep, I got some of those.
Right.
And they're cheaper. And they look some of them look really good.
Right.
I mean, my Pathfinder pawns are pretty sharp.
Right.
So
you can get that. Heck, if you are crafty, you can make your own.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Who is our buddy? Old man Grognard from Grognard. What's his name? What's it? Is it King? So what is his podcast? We met him and Tinkar early on. We were podcasting. We had him on. Glenn Hallstrom.
Right.
Glenn Hallstrom.
Right.
He does that. He talked about making his own. So yeah, it's a smart move. And just print off the computer and put really cool pictures. You can grab a picture from the internet and print it off and have a really cool monster that's unique to your own stuff. So there's nothing wrong with that if you're if you're a crafty guy. That's kind of smart actually.
Right. Saves you money.
But you've seen my wall of stupid with the figures, and it's just like, and that's not all either. You know, I have like 3 big cases full of them still, and so Patrick,
that's the kind of pawn thing.
Yeah, I just I like minis, but you know what, the more I'm playing now, I'm not fully,
unless you're using them.
Yeah, I'm finding that I like Theater of the Mind a lot. I'm even catching myself, like last night, I don't draw much anymore. I just try to I go old school. I like to give a good description. And that's why I like, because I really enjoyed, we play Theater of the Mind with Blackwall on whatever Fridays we get together and run Horde Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I have no issues. I like it. But I do like minis. They're just cool. I'll never get rid of them.
Right.
But anyway.
So apparently you can get this whole skinny mini thing on Skinny Minis.
Yeah, Patrick's talked about those. Yeah.
40 medium, 20 small for $45. Yeah. Can't beat that with a stick. That's a good deal.
I guess are they kind of like Arc Knight? Those clear ones?
Yeah, they're kind of like that.
I got some of those, and Deadlands Pawns. They're cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the Deadlands Pawns.
The set even includes some dungeon dressing, not a whole lot. But
oh, yeah. I've got some Rifts Pawns for Savage Worlds that are bad, dude. They are awesome. I mean, really, not bad like suck, bad like awesome. Great looking monsters, and I've got that. What's that creature? The Splugorth thing that's got the chicks all around him.
Uh-huh.
I've got that cover from Rift's book, and I got a figure for it. It's like this big. It is fabulous. So those pawns are good. And the Deadlands pawns, if you've done any of the Kickstarters for Savage Worlds, the Deadlands stuff, especially recently, they're all putting pawns if you do the big purchase, and you can do them as add-ons. And I've got a bunch of them. I've got supers. I did the sci-fi compendium. That's the first time I didn't go all in. I just paid $60 for the book because I just didn't want to spend $150. I mean, it would have been great, but I play sci-fi like this much at Cabin Con. So,
right.
Anyway,
if you can get those things as like part of a set, I know those bones that Patrick was talking about, sometimes they'll mix in different genres with the main thing. So you'll get some I remember one time there were some space people, and if I remember correctly, or aliens or something like that.
He's right. If you're a painter, you cannot go wrong with the bones.
No,
if you love
it's a
your
great
minis
deal.
like Patrick does, and he paints like a madman, you can't go wrong.
I wonder if it used to be $80 for the basic set, and you can of course pay a bit more, $120 would usually get the whole shebang, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it.
Oh
but
yeah,
you could get a ton. You get a whole the medium. Okay, so see, I think it's the medium. The post office has a medium. It's called the medium flat rate box, and it's a pretty good sized box, and it's jam packed full of minis. Now you have to glue the bases on or whatever and paint them and all that. But if you are a painter, it's a great deal.
I did the first bones, sold a bunch of them for a good deal to Patrick after like 8 years of having them sit in boxes, never getting painted. I kept like 6 or 8, which are still unpainted. But I like them, like the Pathfinder, Red Dragon, and a few others, a cool demon and giants and stuff. But I gave Patrick a buttload of those figures.
And
I didn't give them to him. I sold them to him.
And it's usually, if not every time, I never hear of any kind of controversies out of those Bones releases, because they're not branded for a particular game set. So if they have some off the wall figure that they're like, what is this? It's just whatever they decided to make, and it's cool.
But back to our original point, that Dungeons and Discord lady, she's an Irish gal. She's got a decent little thing going. She's kind of funny. She leans on the woke side, but she's not terrible to listen to.
No.
And she's can be fairly reasonable sometimes. But she's not she seems like she'd be a nice lady. She
would like Wizards of the Coast to be more reasonable, but she realizes that they're awful people.
Yeah, she really does. She admits she knows that. You know what? Whatever. Do what they want. 6th edition. Did you hear what Ryan David predicted this week on Nerd Cognito? He believes because of that new player's handbook cover, because of the way the dragons drinking tea and hanging with the party, he thinks dragons, not dragonborn, dragons are going to be player characters out the gate. I would be floored if that happened.
I don't see how you could be a dragon, not as a first level character.
Well, everybody gets superpowers. Why not? Everybody can be magical and cast fireballs from level 1.
We'll have to see.
Yeah,
maybe it's an option for the characters.
I won't know till somebody tells me, because I'm not buying it. Doesn't matter what they do. And I know they're trash. So
they have a cover for the Dungeon Master's Guide. I didn't know that.
Oh no! Oh, I got to Google that now. Let's see.
Yeah, it is a gold dragon. Gold dragons are supposed to be good, but we know Wizards of the Coast, they don't care about canon. So, you can't really fault them, I guess, because of the canon, because D&D really doesn't have canon that lasts more than the first printing of any one of their books.
Just about.
Whenever they launch a new edition, and sometimes partially through the life cycle of the current edition, they just turn whatever on its ear and stuff. Oh, there's Venger.
That's who it is. That's the DM's guide. That's actually decent.
Yeah. Well,
I don't hate that.
We were talking about this in, I think, the last episode. One of the articles, one of the interior pieces of interior art for the player's handbook would have been a much better cover art piece, because and they might not have been able to do it for licensing reasons. Who knows? Okay, because we're not seeing the whole cover.
Yeah, Patrick said Venger, Warduke, and I don't know who Skyla is. I feel like I should know that, but I don't.
But the interior piece has most of the other characters, or many of the other characters from the D&D cartoon, in an art piece, and it was a much better piece that should have been the cover, in my opinion. So, if it's the cover of a book with crappy rules, then who cares? And that's what I guess that's what our final opinion was. Is, yeah, who cares about the cover?
No,
it's the game that really matters.
I didn't. The cover was unimpressive to me. I saw the gold dragon piece of art.
Mhm.
I wasn't mad or beside myself.
No.
But I was not impressed, and it doesn't. Like you said, it doesn't matter. I'm not their target. So good plan, Gerald Davis. What's up, cousin?
I have not bought an edition of D&D since 3.5. I did not buy 4th or 5th, and there's no reason to buy 6th, in my opinion.
I bought them all up until now, but this will be the one I don't purchase. If I found it cheap, like in a cheapo bin, just to read the player's handbook, I would spend $10 on it, but I'll never find that. So
I think I would feel icky.
well, if I found it in an old bin somewhere for nothing, I'm not giving Watsy any money. Or if I found it, I'm not buying it. Who am I kidding? I'm not buying that stupid crap.
The point?
What's the point? It's going to be 5e with some, some more rules for.
There will be someone.
Strixhaven, you can play some,
By Cabin Con next year, there will be someone who buys it.
Yep.
And we'll probably bring it to Cabin Con so we can look at it and laugh.
True. We'll get a chance to look at it. It's dumb. It's dumb. So that'll be like water's wet.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's stop bashing on WotC because it's too easy.
It's too easy. Yeah. All right. So tonight's topic is about TTRPG in particular, Bloat. And that, hold on for a second. I don't know that game. Blades and Sorcery, haven't heard of that, Sovereign Wolf. I'm sure it's better than D&D. But Bloat. So I kind of want to differentiate first tonight between Bloat, supplements, and adventures. I don't consider supplements. I don't consider adventures bloat. I don't consider campaign settings bloat, but some supplements definitely can be bloat. Additional rules books for sure can be. I had to search hard to find a definition that we use for bloat. So let me read you two that I found. One of them will be in an article that Joe will post, I'm sure, in the show notes. Says bloat is when more and more content is added to a game with additional releases. Now here's the weird phrase, because it was by a wargamer. Usually additional forces over time, like
armies. Okay, now I understand it. Yeah,
right.
So if they're war gamers, then hey, we got the French militia, or maybe some obscure militia from some place in history.
Yeah, now we have the pygmy militia from some deep in the Amazon. And then this is one I found just before we got on here, another way to describe it. Now, this was technically feature bloat, but I think this applies more to RPGs. A term to describe the result of packing too many features and functionalities into a product. Product being Dungeons and Dragons. Product being Pathfinder. Product being Vampire the Masquerade. For me, the only thing I have a problem with bloat, only one. Well, Joe, what do you hear when I say Randy starts complaining? Man, there's too many dang books in 3rd edition.
Too many books, too many rules.
What do you
feel
think?
A little chained up, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I understand what you're saying. For me, though, I don't feel chained so much as so you get 10 books. And this is kind of Wizards of the Coast, and before them, the 3rd edition folks who morphed into, that's Wizards of the Coast. So even 2nd edition, late run into 2nd edition, they would sell a book, and it has a bunch of stuff in there that you say, "Oh, this isn't any good for me."
Right.
But there might be one thing.
Right.
Right. So you buy 15 books, and you might have a handful of things you might use for your game. And so it's more of a, is it worth buying all this crap? And then sometimes they just sell books that are just chock full of races and classes and spells and new game options. And it moves you away from whatever rule set they initially published, and you try to incorporate that, and sometimes it works, but a lot of times it's not just a couple extra classes. The extra classes are usually they usually spike the power curve.
Second and third edition. I don't know about fourth, not know about fifth either. But I know in second and third, it seems they made something new. Like they made a kit book. Most of a kit book would be trash, but there would be one or two kits that would be so awesome that everybody wanted to use them. Or they'd add a race or two. And for me, the biggest problem with Bloat is not that you have no problem. You look on this shelf up over my head, probably half of those are third edition books, 3.5. I mean, I bought, at one time I had nearly every single book in the line. I probably missed like the tail end. I didn't have that. What was the one with where you could be a fighter but still do magic-y stuff? Tome of in 3.5, the one where you had like the fighter that could run across the battlefield and the line of fire would follow him.
Book of Nine Swords.
Book of Nine Swords. Thank you. I didn't get that, but at one time I had just about every one of them.
That's the anime. That's their answer
Correct.
to anime.
And they were fighter types. What I noticed even before that, so they bring a new, and third edition was really guilty of this, second too. They'd create a new class. He would basically just be a fighter, but better. Then here's a wizard. Now, Pathfinder did this. You went from the wizard to what was the other one? The Arcanist. Remember him? Everybody loved the Arcanist because he was like a wizard, but better. And that's the problem most bloat happens in games is they don't just add setting material and adventures in cool different worlds for you to explore. They add all these new rules and players want that. If you're a pure player and you say, ooh, that guy does what I wish the fighter could do already, I'm going to play that guy.
Right.
Like what was that one guy that was like a scout? You like the scout.
Yeah.
He was like a ranger rogue, but kind of better than both.
Mainly because they dumped all the stuff that wasn't very useful.
And then gave him good stuff.
And they kept all the stuff that was useful. Yeah.
Because in that big Cabin Con game where we were fighting each other in the arena, I had that huge Goliath. You almost beat me.
Mm-hmm.
Your guy was that good because you were staying at range, but then I finally got that leap attack, and that was it.
Yeah.
But you were good. I mean, it's like, wow, that scout was tough because I was a beefy fighter.
Right. And they're not meant to be head-on fighters.
But you were good at keeping at range. You were good at that. But my point is, I think in games like that, sometimes the bloat that frustrates me is when a player brings a character that is essentially a fighter, but he gets 2 or 3 feats. Like, what was the dumb thing Pathfinder did? The retraining was that where you could drop a certain skill and pick up another one?
The feats? Retraining, yeah. You can retrain your feats. Yeah.
But couldn't you, I thought there was something where, you could, I'm going to pick, as a fighter, I'm going to give up armor training in this, but
that was something different. You can trade out class features. Yeah.
And there was clearly better choices to game the system.
Right. So they had bravery.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you traded bravery for something equally weenie.
Right.
But most of the time, when you got rid of bravery, you got really good stuff.
Yes, you did.
I'll take this, I can't remember what they called it, but this option that gets rid of bravery. Because bravery is just fear. The fear spell, I believe, is what it.
I don't know what it was called, but there was I think Butch took it, your character, super 2-handed fighter guy that instead of getting double, got triple or 2.5 damage, and you gave up climbing and some other dumb skill. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
It wasn't climbing, but
I know it was something.
Probably bravery.
Probably was bravery and I don't know, underwater basket weaving. But to me, that's the irritating thing. I don't. And so, the older I get, the more I'm fond of just sticking with core.
So what they do, these game companies, so the business model seems to be to put out all of these gaming books that have all of these extra goodies that are designed to entice players, and then their players, bother their DM to see if they can use these features. Mm-hmm. And then it just gets the power creep up. And it's not bad. It's not bad enough that you get a power creep with leveling up. That's expected because you're leveling up.
Correct.
But but just saying, hey, we're going to buy this new book, the power level of my game is shot. I got to refigure everything.
Yeah, and it's not that you couldn't. I mean, trust me, I have plenty of monster books and
Yeah,
options I could do. I
but
can
it's
add class,
annoying.
but it's annoying because now all of a sudden, well, I guess all the fighters are picking this new cool feat, or this everybody's going to multi-class into this wizard Gish guy because he's stupid powerful for a dip of 2 levels. So here we go.
Right,
Everything changes. Remember that stupid Magus build that John Terrell brought to CavinCon, which was off, but it was still really good.
Yeah.
Second,
yeah.
first level.
That was a Pathfinder deal.
That was a Pathfinder deal.
Yeah.
But I consider that 3rd edition.
Yeah.
But instead of just complaining, that's what I consider more of bloat. And I guess these days, as a guy, even though I have, I have some disposable income, I'm tired of spending on lots of products, and I'm looking to try the interesting games out if I want to. But I have to be. I would want a game if I were a person, like if I were a 6th edition aficionado and was going to do it, I would want them to come out with. I like the idea of like 12 classes they're talking about. I'd like to have that in the core book, and maybe one or two supplements for world setting. I don't want any more class feat bullcrap. I don't want any more of that. None.
Yeah, and it's understandable why today's consumer that is the target group for Wizards of the Coast, why they only want to buy a character class is because then they don't have to worry about the other junk. So if the DM reads the class and says, oh, that sounds okay for my game, then he doesn't have to buy the whole book, and he doesn't have to worry about incorporating a whole book into his game, just the one class. So on the one hand, we don't want to have the bloaty thing, but we also kind of point our fingers at those folks and are like, you don't want to spring for the whole book? What's wrong with you? But we can understand it.
Yeah, if they want to sell it that way, I have no problem. I would. It's highly unlikely if I'm inclined to buy. I'm like, I like that class. I'd probably buy the book because I would assume there's got to be something else I like in there. But I'm also have the money. I'm like, $50 is not a huge deal for me. I'll buy a book if I want it.
Right.
But I was interesting. I was surfing around, messing with the bloat idea, trying to find articles. Most of the articles that we're going to link are saying bloat is not really a thing. And I get what they're saying, but I don't believe it. It's funny because on the Pathfinder, an old Pathfinder, the Pathfinder website for first edition, this one person made a comment. I want to read this to you. He said, bloat is the pejorative for options.
Oh, okay. That's a clear perspective. Yeah.
And I added this on because I didn't read it before. I went down 4 or 5 comments, and a guy said, wait a minute, options is the sugarcoating term for bloat.
Yeah,
It works both ways. I mean,
it does.
I don't hate either one.
Yeah.
Years ago, and Joe would attest, I was always like, "Oh, players get something better. That sucks," But that's not really it. I just hate when like certain classes become, once the Scout came out. In my opinion, there was no reason to ever play a Ranger, ever in 3rd edition. There's none.
For the most part, when a Ranger gets an animal companion, it's usually killed really fast. It doesn't really help at all. It's there for show.
And maybe a little RP coolness.
Yeah.
But that's not helpful when you're 15th level and fighting. Yeah.
Now, if they make them too powerful, and they should be tough, if you're going to have it there in your group, if they take a hit and fall, every combat, then it's not really worth having. So that's an easy power to jettison from the Ranger. And the early Ranger, the D&D first edition Ranger, didn't have animal companions. They had druid spells and they had wizard spells.
They had animal friendship. They could summon and make friends with an animal, but they were like just a regular animal. You get that at like 5th or 6th level, and you get a stupid wolf with 2 hit dice. You're like,
but it's just you have a pet that you can train. They don't even. It's not something that is a huge part of your character class.
No.
It's one tiny little thing, and so it's regulated like that by it not being very powerful. So you can use it as a little scout animal, perhaps. You can't really, unless you can speak with animals as well. It's not even good for a scout.
In old school D&D, Darth, Joe avoided this like the plague. He said, yeah, I had more than one familiar die in front of my wizard. It sucks. Dude, in old school, 3rd edition's nothing compared to 1st edition.
Right.
Your familiar died, you'd lose like 4 levels, dude. Joe had that happen to him once.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm done with Find Familiar.
Yeah. I mean, it takes up room in your spell book.
Mm-hmm.
And you only use it once anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, hey, that really sucked at dying. I'm not using that again. So it's wasted space in your spell book. So why even have it?
Is there a difference between power creep and bloat? For me, that's the only part of bloat that I don't like is the power creep part.
Well, I think power creep is a side effect of bloat.
I agree.
Bloat doesn't necessarily have to have power creep, but it often does.
Yeah. But to be fair, like when we first got, I remember we were playing, this will be more recent. And I'm sorry, all our examples are more of 3rd edition. That's the most recent. We're heavy into Pathfinder, and they come out with the APG, the Advanced Player's Guide, 1st edition Pathfinder, and the Witch came out. And remember, they had some hexes, which had, and remember, Slumber Hex was, we were like, oh my God, this is unstoppable. And the thing was,
they can just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, right?
Correct.
They didn't really have a limit.
Well, I know for sure that seemed, and that was the first core book beyond the basic core book. It was the first, here we're adding, this is like a player's handbook 2 or an Unearthed Arcana. It was billed as that. And here comes classes. And they built like, and even that one, that was like the Witch was like, I'm not quite the wizard at high levels, but at low levels, I'm better.
Yeah.
I'm shutting things down better than anybody.
Right.
And there was other Witch builds that were even worse. But but that one was like, we're like, holy crap, that seems ridiculous. And we learned to understand it. And I played a Witch in the Cabin Con thing, Tanakh, if you remember him, and he was honestly, he was one of the more powerful guys. Yeah. I wasn't unstoppable. And I'm not a good builder. So if I just roll in and like once I got to 7th, 8th level, I'm like, Tanakh could hold his own about anybody except maybe a handful.
He was a warlock, right?
Yeah, I was a witch. Well, yeah, warlock. I don't know if a witch was called I don't know in Pathfinder if a witch, male witch was a warlock, probably.
No, because a warlock is a particular class and witch is a particular class.
Okay, yeah. Do you think RPG companies are just predestined for their games to get bloated? I mean, if the game's popular enough, and I know D&D's one example. Take Rifts.
Mm-hmm.
Rifts seems to, I don't say they balance it, but they seem to ride weird waves. And people can correct me because I am not a Rifts master. Mm-hmm. But there'll be things like you're like, oh, I'm playing this level kind of guy. The Glitter Boy is the best thing ever. In the next book, they're like Glitter Boy Killer. In the next book, Vampire Assassin. And you're like, these guys are godling. And, next thing you know, it's like it's just all over the place. But to be fair, I guess Rifts is not, I think I've heard Legion of Myth make a good comment once that and even I think, if I remember when I went to visit them at Palladium Games there in Detroit, I believe they told us, you really got to decide, you can play everything together, but you may want to just have certain books available in certain areas. But I don't know.
It's hard to justify that, really, but I get why you would want to, because what I understand, I don't have a lot of the world books.
No.
But sometimes it's not just from the point of view of introducing a new occupational character class or racial character class that seems to be overpowered compared to some other ones. Sometimes they inaccurately reprint material from earlier books, like combat rules and whatnot, and it's either they tap somebody to do most of the content for a book, and then they finish it up, but the whole combat section, there's a lot of differences. So I remember listening to some of their episodes where they're talking about the different Palladium books, and so I don't think power creep is necessarily a thing you can accuse Palladium of, because their power level, they don't have a balance.
I agree.
It's not really there.
Maybe they're the answer to what other companies should do, but I don't know if they can. I mean, their setting kind of gives them carte blanche to, hey, look at this.
Balthazar.
Buddy Balthazar. What's up? He's from I see him a lot on the Speakeasy over on.
Oh, cool.
I haven't been on Rumble, and I'm trying. David got booted, but I need to get on there. I definitely have subscribed to them. But yeah, what's up, man? Glad you made it. Patty made a good point. This will further this discussion with the companies. Patty makes a good comment. He says, you guys should watch the Guerrilla Miniatures Games interview with Tabletop Minions. I think more companies should be comfortable making one-off games that don't see more editions. That's not a bad idea. Or even, what about this, Joe? What if games were more narrow in scope? Kind of like that, where you could do an RPG and you're going to tell kind of not necessarily one specific story, but just a handful of stories in a very narrow genre. Like I thought Ravenloft should have been a very narrow genre.
Yeah, you could have made the Ravenloft RPG borrowed from the D&D rules and maybe added a few extra because, they did do that kind of.
I'm going to stop.
All right. He probably didn't mean to do that. Anyway, yes, Ravenloft was a good idea that could have been its own standalone game to support Patty's Parlor, his thought on that. And yeah, they probably should just they could have, and they did that in second edition somewhat with like Dark Sun. They made that as its own thing, and they had some additional supplemental products for it, but it was its own thing. I guess you could probably use whatever spell, but I think that they had some rules for what spells were in that from the player's handbook. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. But they don't want to do that.
Yeah, I lost my skills for a second. I think I'm sorry, I messed with the wrong thing, but yeah, Balthazar says this about Ravenloft. Predated the whole vampire craze, I think, but it really took off thereafter. Never quite understood that whole theme. I'm not a fan of any undead, and vampires are their own kind of evil. I'm a fan, but
as the enemy,
yeah. Yeah. See, I don't know about that, Patty. Patty says Planescape was his own thing, not the way I ran it. Planescape infused all my campaigns when I played just D&D. Planescape was how you travel the planes. That was just me. So that's what I did. But yeah, sorry, Joe. I was trying to do something with the wife. She was asking a question. I had to get out.
Sure. But yeah, I think with Planescape, maybe thematically it was its own thing.
Yes.
But I think it was also written as what Randy was doing. Because they referred to other games, the other worlds. Settings and worlds, and how they fit into Planescape. Like it was always said that the Dragonlance world, Kryn, right? That's the Dragonlance world, was separate. It had a crystal sphere that you couldn't bypass.
And I broke that rule.
Right.
And I broke it immediately.
Right.
I thought Planescape for me, when I was feeling the heavy bloat of second edition, looking at all the, because I had all the box sets at one time. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally all of them, except maybe the Mystara box set. And I was starting to like, man, what am I going to do with all these? And then Planescape came out, and I was like, maybe I only had a few of them. Then I started buying all of them. Hold on one more second, guys. Thank you, honey. All right. But sorry about that. Had a sweet tea delivery system, but the wife's helping out. But for me, Planescape said, wow, now I can use all this. And I had characters jumping from Birthright to Dark Sun to Greyhawk. We were bouncing all over the D&D worlds, and I love that. But other people, I could see how they could look at Planescape and go, man, that's a lot of weird mumbo jumbo. They had their own, the cant with its own kind of lingo.
That was a sigil thing.
Yes,
right?
True.
Right. So I never thought of that as anything but a sigil thing. And sigil can just burn in hell for all I'm concerned. You could run Planescape without sigil, and it would be awesome because sigil sucks.
We'll just have to agree to disagree on that one.
It is a hive of scum and villainy.
Now I can agree with that. I can agree with that part. But so does it with the company then? Do you think, I know Joe has his own opinion. I mean, can you keep supporting a game and avoid bloat? I mean, let's
It
agree.
depends on
Palladium.
it depends on how you decide to support it.
Okay.
Okay. So if you and for a game company to remain viable as a company, it has to sell things. And you can't sell, let's say, you put out a book and, we need to do a revised edition because of typos and we have to clarify things and stuff like that. You can't do that a whole lot because if you do that a whole lot, it just shows you don't know how to edit your product, which is a problem in our industry anyway.
Yeah.
But that's not really a good business model.
Yep.
But
video games do it all the time. They're always patching crap.
Yeah, they are. And they often get people to buy their products halfway done and you pay to be a tester, which is no good. So I think you can have a business model where you do the things that these companies have been doing and it's working to a degree, but there's a lot of us who don't like it. So, but you can have a business model where you rely on things other than new game rules. Like DM Blackwall says, more adventures. It's not proven to be it's not shown to be more lucrative, right, than say a book of spells, but you could have setting material and incorporate some of the other things that people like as well. And then perhaps that might work for you. But a lot of us would rather, they used to do just setting material, right? Back in second edition days, a lot of the not World of Greyhawk, some of that, but not much.
Forgotten Realms was huge.
Yeah, so Forgotten Realms had lots of product support. And it was mostly free of game rules, right? So I remember that because when you would say, "Hey, here's a new thing," I say, "Oh, cool, let me see," and I would like, "Where's the game rules at?" And there would be almost none. Yep. So, and for me as a player, I would rather be shown the setting by the DM rather than already know about it. Yes, that kind of ruins part of the game for me.
It does. So, you want to learn the cool things and not just read about them.
Right.
Learn them in game. Yeah.
Right. Learning them in game is a lot more fun.
Patrick says Palladium has kept itself in business for 30 years doing what they've been doing, which is continually making world books. I think they have an advantage some game systems don't have. That is, they have a gonzo, everything goes kitchen sink world.
And they expect the DM or GM to adjudicate what they don't want in there.
Yeah, that's true. And Blackwall says this is interesting. Also related to games and new genres, new settings to explore. Yeah, that's kind of a nod toward those generic systems like GURPS and Savage Worlds.
Right.
You can do that. So, but you could just take the rules and put a different spin on it. I don't consider new settings a problem. That's like during the heyday of the D20 system. I didn't mind 1.5 million settings because it was kind of cool to see what was out there and what floated my boat.
Right. Yeah, so DM Blackwall says, for example, D&D has never really tried a black powder pirate game with airships, but they have the rules to support it. Sure. They have all kinds of other weird stuff. I mean, they had Spelljammer, so maybe they tried it by having Spelljammer and just had a twist on the whole gunpowder and pirates, and by instead having the magic, some of them living ships. And I seem to remember there being some sort of firearms in the Spelljammer rules.
Sounds right.
Because I didn't the hippo people, the
gifts, yep.
The gifts were often pictured with guns, weren't they?
I thought they were flintlocks, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Balthazar Baxter Play. He says learning things about campaign settings as you go in the game, I think, would be a whole lot more realistic and accurate to a role playing. Yeah, it would help the experience because if you come in already knowing stuff, versus, maybe you meet a red wizard for the first time with Forgotten Realms. You're like, he wants to send us on a quest. He seems like a nice guy. He's got tattoos and a red robe. So what?
Right.
Wizards do weird stuff.
Right.
So
yeah, in relationship to that, I can understand a player character knowing a bit about their town and some of the things about the region around them.
Yes.
And the setting. What does it look like? How threatening are the monsters, and how much warfare? Because a lot of that is going to impact for the most part, is going to impact their life in some kind of way.
And you're also more of a fan of swords and sorcery, what I would call points of light, where like there's a lot of wilderness and unknown in the world. So only, like Joe said, he likes the idea of like being just small, well-controlled, small regions, not like, like the Forgotten Realms has so many big cities and massive organizations. And
right. If the world is as settled,
right.
If your game world is as settled as let's say, our present day world, where there's hardly any, except for government controlled preserves, there's hardly any land that doesn't have some sort of development going on. Some homes, a town, roads. I mean, if your whole world is just peppered with all of that stuff, then there's part of adventure is exploration and finding new things. And if the whole world's already been settled, then what's the new thing you're going to find?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe going underground or in the sea or out in space, perhaps. But.
Yeah, and if you don't get and if you have all these cool things that you only read about, and your players don't get to experience, like you were saying and Balthazar was saying, it would be more fun for you to experience. So for the group, meeting a red wizard, I keep using that, could be a cool experience when he ends up betraying you and trying to suck your life force to, make himself a lich. And you goes, dude, he's a bad dude. And someone says, yeah, could have told you. The Red Wizards of Thays, they are not good dudes. They're all necromancers. Right. Oh, okay. Kill on sight. Gotcha.
Right.
And here's a question. If it's time for a little change in direction just a tiny bit, is bloat, power creep, or just bloat or excessive more? We'll say bloat. Is bloat better than the new edition treadmill? I mean, D&D manages to do both.
Okay, so if you don't change editions, right, like with how Palladium does, what they do.
Right.
So Palladium has a rule set. There are minor changes throughout the years. Some of them are actually just, different authors throwing in different rules.
There is a Palladium Fantasy 1 and 2, but that was the only exception.
Right. So it's basically the same rule set until they brought out their, what is it called?
Mega Damage?
No, the hardcover.
Ultimate.
Yeah, so Rift's Ultimate.
Yep.
So, but Palladium has a system. It's largely the same. Even more, it's way more stable than D&D system has ever been over the years.
I think so. And it handles crazy character ideas too.
Right. So, and most of the time what they introduce are world books. They have a setting and they explore that setting within the book. There might be a new character class. There might be more spells, but it's fairly self-contained within a world book. And it's easy to just say, oh, hey, Rift's China. Well, we're never going to go to China, so I'm not going to worry about that. I might buy it and look at it and say, oh, that's cool, and then not ever play it.
We got a good crowd. Mac Thompson just showed up, and Patty and Blackwall, and Dean. We got good people. Good conversation. So yeah, go ahead. So
that you could call that perhaps bloat in a way, but I think that's done well.
Yep.
Right. So the rule base is pretty stable. They just introduce a bunch of optional places to adventure in.
Correct.
Like Dean Blackwall was saying. They do that. They do that very well.
Rift South America, Rifts. They have like the Juicer Uprising, which is kind of an adventure setting.
So they have a storyline that they work through. Right. So a couple of them,
which you can easily ignore. No problem.
Yeah. So what most of the other big companies do is every couple of years they just come out with a new edition. instead of perhaps a little pamphlet that revises the rules because we figured out over a long period of gameplay that this option is better than that option, and this is what we see the game in. And then you have a new edition to buy every 2 or 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is. But I think the one can lead into the other, especially with D&D. So second edition, you had lots of game elements added or proposed through their different book releases. So up until there was the Schism and Company almost failed, and then Wizards of the Coast bought it.
Yep.
Right. So second edition had a bunch of setting releases and a bunch of, I wouldn't say too many. Well, okay.
The black books were crazy rule changes.
Right. Okay. So you wouldn't think that second edition had a lot of material, but they had both the clerics and the wizards both had a 4-volume set of spells and thousands.
Most and magic items. A 4 set of magic items.
Yeah. And there were all these things were released in modules and setting books and whatnot. And I'll tell you what, I got the whole set of 4 books at one point. I don't have them anymore. And I flipped through them, and I'm like, oh, this is a junk spell. This is junk. This is junk. And I would say at least half of it's just junk. 10 different versions of Fireball in essence. So even the second edition had a lot of rules bloat. I'm not sure which one's better, because the bloat can often lead to a new edition, because that's usually the excuse. Hey, we need a clean slate.
D&D's kind of run that what do they call it? Scam a couple of times.
Right. And Pathfinder did it.
Yep.
But they made a new rule set.
Completely new. Yes.
Yeah.
One is not
tested. Yeah, they tested the waters a bit with the space game that they have.
Starfinder, which I think is a nice little version of. It had some elements they were testing, but it still plays like first edition. Have you ever played Starfinder?
No.
It's not bad. You would like it. It's a decent, but there's only 6 level spells, but it's meant to be more space fantasy, not meant to be super mega magic stuff. So, but you can do some pretty great stuff. They get crazy amounts of raises, but that makes sense. You're out in the stars, star spanning adventures. So a buddy of ours, Jeff's a big fan of Starfinder, and it's not a bad system. Canada.
But what's better or worse? I don't know. I think just one can often lead to the other.
There was a while I know going from first to second to third to fourth, I was excited for a new edition. I actually, each time they made the change, I was like, I'm down with the sickness. That's okay, Balthazar. He says, most of the other systems mentioned here on the Speakeasy and Delver, I've had no experience with. However, I owned a lot of AD&D and D&D. Don't worry, we do a lot of D&D talk. So whatever,
yeah, it's mostly D&D.
May not be the AD&D, but we do have a lot of it. We played the crap out of first and second. Joe and I ran the whole gamut, dude. We were back since Beckme, so
right.
But we'll talk a lot of that. We do. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, I would rather a game. I think I would like. This sounds weird, even though I said I think power creep is bad. I would rather a system, if it's good, go ahead and push the envelope. I would rather do what Blackwall suggests. Try different setting books. Try tweaking the genre a little bit. Use the same core rules. I hope I'm not giving anything. I won't give anything away, but I think Blackwall, he practices what he preaches in his game, Horde Wars. I'll say that much. And I think that's the better way to go. But if you're going to just pile on books saying third edition, I didn't hate it. I mean, obviously, I bought a whole bunch. Oh, no. Patrick, tell me no. We're getting Starfinder second edition. Of course.
Okay. So I'm going to say this about the big companies. I don't fault any company making money. That's why they exist. As long as they put out a good product that's useful. The problem with having 2E, 3E, 4E, 5E is most of the time it's unnecessary. So they cause the problem of bloat, and then they say, well, we need to reset now because there's too much bloat and it's all out of control. And now you can do that and still have essentially the same rule set. You can streamline it and say, here's the D&D rule set. We've played a lot of these different options for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a rule set that is streamlined and it's based on the gaming experiences from the last several years of real gaming.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be the same rule set, but let's say the player's handbook had a fighter class, and then they had 5 other classes that were fighter-like, and they just figured out, not necessarily because it's more powerful, but it better represents what the fighter archetype. So you have 5 different classes that have been, and it's usually 10 times more, 5 different character classes over the span of this edition for the fighter archetype. And we've just, through feedback and our own playing and in-house and whatnot, have settled on, instead of the fighter from the initial release in the player's handbook, this other character class, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Say it was the scout from Pathfinder.
Right.
This is the superior fighter, not because it's more powerful, but we believe it more represents the archetype that we
want to have in our game, and that is one advantage of Bloat. Let's call Bloat, and not a non-negative way. Options. You can say, well, you know what? They've put out 7 different fighter types. We like this one. We're going to call this guy our fighter.
Right.
That's not a bad way to do it.
If you do that, I think that if that's what you were really doing, then you could have development blogs online, videos, and saying, that we are 2 years into our game release, and we're seeing people complain about this thing. And here's a pamphlet that says these rules are out and these other rules are in. And even if you have to pay $1 or $2 to get it.
Early to mid 3rd edition, Monty Cook give him some props. He did a little of that on his old website, Malhavoc Press, where he would say, the Ranger, because he did multiple Ranger versions, talked about the Wizard. He previewed his Magister from Arcana Evolved, and he said, make these changes. This could do this. The Ranger's kind of lame. Maybe you should do this. And then 3.5 came out, and he did his own stuff. But during the early, mid part of 3.0, not 3.5, but yeah. Go ahead.
But that's never really how they present any of this.
No.
So I could accept Bloat from that perspective. We're trying all these things, and we've found that most people and our own gaming has supported this class as the fighter. And that would be fine. But they don't do that. They just say, we're doing a new edition because we've made too much stuff in the previous edition and we got to start over again.
Herwood, I mistyped it.
And then even if they didn't do it from that perspective, if they kept the core rule set the same, D20, add your modifiers. Saving throws are done this way. Combat goes this way. And just leave the core rules identical over the editions and just say this other stuff we're going to mess with, but D&D is still D&D, then I think we wouldn't be having a lot of these conversations about D&D.
Larry Elliott, he's kind of a noob, relatively speaking, a few years in. He says, though I've not played for long, seems the new editions make more bad changes than good. To make money, purposely create situations, so have reason to have a new edition to fix the mistakes we made. It's interesting you said that, because that was actually the case for 3rd edition. When they were rolling out 3rd edition, Monty Cook told people they had already talked about 3.5. They knew 3.5 was going to be a thing. So, yeah, that's not bad. Balthasar loves my bookshelf. It is much, much less impressive than it used to be. But thank you. I have a few more books in another room. But this is the bulk of my collection these days. So not overly.
I am going to potentially burst the bubble here. Is with all this, what we've said about our preferences.
Sure.
What we would have liked instead of what actually happened.
Sure.
Your gaming table decides what you play at your gaming table.
Correct.
And the DM can say, I don't care how much you want to play that thing. I think it's overpowered. You're not playing it at my table.
Correct.
Now, if you stonewall everything that your players ever say, you might end up not having any players,
right?
Or you might just curate your table to what you like.
Correct, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, either approach. So
if you're a player that needs to try the newest, biggest, brightest, coolest, shiny thing, you may not want to come play at my table because I may not let you do it.
Right.
I did and just kind of, if it's okay, I think we're kind of getting near the wrap up on this discussion, if you don't mind, Joe. Right. I wanted to kind of end. I did a little, I won't call it a deep dive, and I'm sure I would bet money it's not fully accurate, but it's close. I got a wild hair at my butt and thought, you know what? I wonder which edition of D&D had the most supplements. I even went so far as to count all the things that I could find listed on internet lists. And guess what? For OD&D, there were 8 booklets. Original D&D had 8 total. That was new. That was fine. Now, BECME, this is where it gets weird. Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, and Immortals had 54 supplements. Now, this is counting modules, and it counts all 3 variants of the basic box set. It counts Rules Cyclopedia. AD&D 1E, counting modules, I got a count of about 167 products. And that includes Unearthed Arcana and some of the later stuff, but not that many books, but lots of supplements and things. AD&D was the second edition, was the clear king of, if you want to call it bloat. I counted 553 supplements. That includes all core books. That even includes some of like the toys and things they made, but that wasn't the biggest part of it. We're talking about actually less modules, more like Forgotten Realms crap. Ravenloft and Planescape. Ravenloft had a boatload of stuff, and Dark Sun had a lot more than I remembered.
Yeah.
And then third edition, I'm going to differentiate here, had 33 supplements.
Yeah, it didn't have a shorter run though.
Much shorter run, a couple of years, but 3.5 piled on with 152. So if you want to count them together, that's 185. Still falling way short of second.
Oh yeah.
Fourth edition, not knowing much, I counted a little over 100. I have 101 as my count. And fifth edition, now this, to be fair, I feel like this is probably not right, but maybe, counting adventures and everything, I've only got 48 books for fifth edition.
Okay.
That doesn't, but remember, they were real careful initially. They was like doing 1 or 2 releases a year.
There was several years where they didn't release a new book. It was the main 3, where it was a very slow roll the first few years, very slow.
Yeah. And I think 6th edition, while it probably will not beat OD&D, it will probably be the next least because they're planning to go mostly digital. But it's interesting when you talk about which edition had the most bloat. Second one, well, let's not say bloat, just supplements. Second one by a landslide.
Yeah, because in 2nd edition, they had a big focus on settings. And you had your Forgotten Realms, like you were saying, with Ravenloft and Dark Sun.
Yep.
Those 3, many of the other ones, they saw 1 release and they were done.
No, almost nothing had one. Almost nothing had 1 release, dude. You'd be shocked. Greyhawk had like.
What about Spelljammer?
Spelljammer had like 25.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Yes, they had a bunch.
That's with adventures too, right? Okay.
Rock of Brawl. There was tons of them, dude.
Oh boy!
I just remember the Rock of Brawl. That was one of the big ones. Now I'll tell you this: if you want to count the D20 craze compatible to 3rd edition.
Oh boy.
Oh my God. And if you stuck Pathfinder in with 3rd edition, which I wouldn't be opposed of, that number would double, if not triple. It would be more competitive.
Pathfinder had a lot more books in it because 3rd edition, they came off of the kind of the death of 3rd edition.
Yeah. And
they continued their machine throughout the 4th edition of D&D and just bulldozed all over 4th edition.
If you counted D20 3rd edition OGL licensing for the 3rd edition game, I would think it would beat 2nd. If you allowed third-party supplements to be counted.
Yeah, I do think. I think I remember the Pathfinder guys saying that they weren't going to do that though. Mm-hmm. When they first came out with it, they're like, "Yeah, we got this thing. We're going to try not to do the the third edition thing, but they did.
Well, I think they got more popular than they thought. Balthazar says, is that the edition with the huge number of monster manual supplements? If you're talking about 30, yes. In 3.5, there were 5 monster manuals. And the Fiend Folio. And then eventually there was if you count all the books like Lords of Madness, where you deep dive into aberrations, and it's not Necronomicon, something of the undead, Libris Mortis.
They had a bunch of dragon things too.
And the dragon things and the fiendish codices. Oh yeah, there's probably 10, 12 hardback monster manuals. But I know 3rd edition was big about hardbacks. They may have had more hardbacks than any other edition.
Well, what about 2nd edition in the Monstrous Compendium?
Oh my goodness, there were so many of those, brother.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, every time you turned around. But 2nd edition still won. I mean, by a landslide.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. But anything else you want to say about bloatation?
Nah, I don't think so.
Why don't we tell them to do the things then? We've been rambling for an hour plus, so.
Yeah. Do the things such as subscribe, like, share, comment here on the live stream or come after the fact, add to all those things that get that algorithm humming. Help out the show.
Yep. Do that. Sweet.
Do that stuff.
And Joe will have a couple of links to some Bloat articles you may find interesting, you may not. Most people claim Bloat doesn't exist, but read them yourself, see what you think.
Yeah, do that.
All right. Shall we jump into the next topic, do a kind of quick one and call it a night?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So our second little short topic is using religions in tabletop role-playing games. And I was leaning initially toward the idea, what do you think of, so I have a link to Light Raiders, which is a Christian-based RPG, but it seems like it's a weird game I've seen. It doesn't look horrible, but kind of weird. It had a crowdfunder. Deadlands they refer to some Christian stuff in the book and they have real world religions like Islam. I don't know if Judaism has mentioned any of the supplements. I wouldn't be shocked if it was. And even old D&D had the Dragon magazine Joe and I talked about where they had stats for Satan. I have it somewhere. What do you think of using like real world religions in your RPGs?
Well, it would depend. So with Deadlands, which represents a version of the Old West, the Old West of the real world, it's just a different version. Then I think it's fine to have some, if you want to have some representation of real world religions, then that's fine. I'm not sure with it being I don't think it's a great idea to make them a big part of the game, but that's just me. If it's medieval fantasy in some world that's not Earth, I absolutely don't see the point.
I don't either. And I know that I have toyed in my mind, and I've said it before, of having a world where there was a one God or even a Christian God and a Satan. I never could actually use the labels because of my upbringing. But even when I thought about a one God, the one ultimate God and the one ultimate evil, that I could get with, but it would not be anything like the Christian faith because that's mine. And you said it once, it sometimes feels a little, to use modern slang, gives me the ick sometimes.
Yeah. It's better to, from my point, for my 2 cents, to stay away from stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your game is fantasy and it is escapism. It's not the real world. So let's just not worry about bringing in the real world stuff. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Ironman's not wrong here. He says he does think if you want to bring in realism, a realistic medieval setting, realistic in our world, would be better with monotheistic. That would add realism to a real, if you want to do kind of an RPG pundit style historical take on RPGs. I'm not saying it I'm not fully against it, but it makes me a little nervous if you're going to bring in Christianity. Now, to be fair, I'm not as put off if you bring in Islam or other religions because honestly, they don't mean nothing to me. In fact, you want to know the truth, I don't think they're real. I mean, you can't, if you're a Christian, It's exclusive. It's exclusive. I don't want to go down that road, but it's exclusive. There is no other God. So, but it doesn't matter to me if someone ran a Christian themed game. And now, if they were being disrespectful, I would bounce if I was playing it. I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Right.
But honestly, if you're a cleric of God, Jehovah, what could you not do?
Right.
Push came to shove, you're following what he's doing. Kind of like in the Dresden Files, when one of the Knights of the Cross, if they're on a holy mission, Dresden says they might be unstoppable.
Right.
You know,
that's the way he writes.
Yeah, that dragon was sweating bullets in that second or third book. Whenever Michael pulled the sword out and said, "Okay, it's on," and so yeah.
And the only reason the thing that happened to Michael, where he retired or was retired, was because it was time.
Yep. And he wasn't. Yeah, true. That's right. Had to pass it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think. Oh, Balthasar says I think deities are essential to a good, full-bodied role-playing experience. However, I would always base them on known pantheons, as it seems vaguely odd to try to make it similar to reality. Yes, and it can be challenging, though. The worlds that Joe and I, in theory, are working on, our twin world idea, I'm gonna mess with. I like pantheons. Joe could care less. He's not a big. He does. I will build my own. Yes, you'll see elements and stuff. I have a couple of deities already. Joe knows I've dropped the name Lohas in multiple different sessions. So it's a couple of deities I have that I like. I don't know to what extent I'll dive into the others, but I like a well-defined couple of religions that clerics can choose that'll feel a little different than the other cleric. But if someone wants to run, I'm doing the Greek pantheon, that's cool. No problem. That was old school. That's how I did it in D&D back in the day. We'd say, what pantheon are you following?
Yeah, Roman or Norse or whatever. Yeah.
I just handed you guys deities and demigods, and I said, worship who you want.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't worry about it. So, and I remember as we played later, well before second edition, when you had like your special chosen weapon, if you were a specialty priest, even Joe and I thought, that's weird that you worship Mars, the god of war, but you can't use swords.
It's really dumb.
He'd be all about it. So I kind of always liked the idea of the clerics getting a special weapon.
The idea that you hitting somebody upside the head with a mace isn't going to make their head squirt blood, which is, can't use edged weapons because it makes people bleed. I mean, it's weird.
You hit them hard enough, they'll be lucky that you can even tell they have a head.
Right. It was a really odd rule.
I used to know where it came from, but I have forgotten.
It came from stupidity, in my opinion.
Well, you know, it just helped, dude. Let's be fair. The cleric needed some limitations. Homie was the king. He was the king.
The king.
He was the king, dude. Almost in every edition of D&D, short of massively high levels. When
they made him more, they always tended to make them more powerful too.
He almost couldn't be avoided. I mean, in first edition, when he could only access 7th level spells, you could argue, hey, you can't touch this. Right? You can't touch Meteor Swarm. You can't touch Wish. And you couldn't because there was no miracle. I don't believe there was a miracle in first edition.
No.
And so there was some limitations. He goes, you're right, but I do have a +5 suit of armor, which you don't have. I have a +5 Mace of Disruption. I have these trinkets. And I got 3 times hit points as you do, wizard boy.
Right.
So he was more than equal. Oh. DM Blackwall claims the limitations to blunt weapons came from oath avoidance from in real life Crusader monks who had vowed never to use a sword again. Okay.
Which, while happened in the real world, is still dumb to have a whole class of characters that can't use a sword. I can see having folks say, hey, I hated war. I'm never going to use a sword again. That makes sense. But
welcome, Dice Tells. He just got in a little late, I think. He votes bloat. He's down with the bloatness.
Down with the bloat.
Don't hurt my feelings. Do what you want to with it. A lot of those articles will say, I'm sorry to get off track again, but they'll say like, if there's no such thing as bloat, use what you want. Yeah, but that's a little bit of a cop-out. There is such thing as power creep and bloat. It's a thing. Yeah. But it's okay if you're cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind. But I'm not as fond of a vague god that my cleric, I worship the gods of goodness. After a while, I'm like, why are you any different than someone else that worships a slightly different god of goodness? Well, I'm not. Then who really cares?
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's it, man. anything else you want to say about deities and stuff, or are you kind
Not
of
really? I think we've talked about this topic a few times.
And I wanted to focus more on real world religions, not all of them.
Yeah. So real world religions are in the real world and should just stay there.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I mean, but okay, so even rifts, okay, it's Earth.
Yep.
But it's not Earth at the same time.
Right.
So why have our present day religions in a game, in a setting that's so divorced from reality? It's just it's odd. References to it because it's still Earth. Maybe you're sorting through a ruin and you find some old Bibles or Qurans or something like that.
Right.
But for your average medieval fantasy or sword and sorcery game, sure, have religions if you want. And you can even make a monotheistic religion. But does it need to be Christianity? I think it doesn't. I think it could be different. I think it should be different because we're playing in a fantasy world. Who cares?
Dice Tales agrees. Keep it in real life, out of fantasy. Great call, Joe. Iron Man, though, I was waiting for someone to say this. I wasn't going to say it. Most of these and demigods were real world at some point.
Yeah.
And some people still claim, like I know someone that claims to worship Thor.
Right.
So.
And I know if my knee-jerk reaction is, yeah, but they're not real. They're not real.
They're not really.
None of them.
So to be fair, and I said this, Christianity is the only religion that if it came up in a game, you would see me go, I'm watching you now, Dungeon Master.
Right.
I'm going to watch how you handle this.
Right.
Because I don't want to see a lot of blasphemy.
Right.
So, but that's just me. It's not like I would call down, oh, I hate you. And slap
no.
But I'd be like, dude, I'm not doing this. This is not part of the thing. But the thing is, I could deal with a much better with a what's the word I'm looking for? A metaphor, or that's not the right word. If someone created a one god, one good god and a one evil god, kind of Melkor and Iluvatar from Lord of the Rings, and want to do a lot of Christian-like themes, but not use the names or the places or Jesus or nothing,
right.
I'd be down with that.
So Pendragon, probably did because it's with Arthurian knights, right? And they existed in Europe, and Europe. It was the knights they represented Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
In the real world, kind of, sort of.
Right. I'm not saying full on no, don't. I'm saying tread carefully. For me, for Randy to enjoy the game, you have to tread carefully.
Yeah, and this is all preference, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not really wedded to the idea of hardcore medieval fantasy where you're really trying to get that this is Earth, but slightly different. I'm more of a let's be really different because I don't care to simulate or approximate our medieval history. Because I don't care. Because I'm just playing a game.
Yeah. Not with specific mechanics, but tell me this, Joe. Does 13th Age do the gods the way you really kind of like? They're just the gods, and they're not really caring much.
Well, they're not. They're just not present.
No, they're not really part of it.
Except they kind of are with.
They give you powers.
With the icons.
As long as you do the right things, follow the right rituals, they give you powers.
What I'm saying is the icons are kind of like the deities. I mean, they're just different. They're a couple of steps down power-wise, I guess. They're not described, except as far as their personalities. But their power level, they don't have stats.
No.
So,
though before they switched to the new second edition, they were talking about making a book for the stats and the icons. And I remember one of the creators was saying, if we make them, they're going to be the hardest 10th level fight you could ever possibly have. That a group of characters better be 10th level. They better have all the maximum high level gear they could have to even think to take on an icon in a combat.
Right.
That's what they said. It would be the ultimate fight in that game. And that's pretty cool. But they said that they thought it was possible for characters to defeat icons. All right, man. Well, let's let's start to scoot out of here. We'll remind folks, anything happening in Big Geek Emporium? What's the word with that? Or is it working a little better now? I've been out for a while.
It works, but I'm still working on getting the data back up in it. So,
and you're talking about doing less, though. It's going to be a smaller site. Is that right?
It may end up being that way. I mean, there certainly wasn't a big hoo-ha when I caused the problem. So a few people have reached out and said, "What's the deal?" And I've responded to most of them, if not all of them. But considering how the traffic had been on it, if I can get all of the data back up, I will. I'm going to be able to get, I'm pretty sure, all of the user data and sales data restored. The problem is going to be the products, because those were all lost.
Oh, okay.
So, that's going to be the problem. One of the tech guys that I was using earlier on says they have a backup. I'm going to see if it's going to be usable. And so we'll see.
I'm going to start doing some serious work for Big GeekCon 2. We're under 4 months away. It's September 20th, 22nd, 2024. $30. If you bring your kids, you got to keep an eye on them. We're not babysitting, but they are welcome. And Mac Thompson just rolled back in.
Back in time to say goodbye.
Our man asked what about accessing our accounts on BG? Is that still not possible?
That's part of the data that is I'm rebuilding.
Okay. That's rough. That's a rough thing for them. The guys that bought stuff. It sucks. Oh, man. But 4 Points by Sheraton is where, in Saginaw, is where the Big Geek Con 2 will be. It is, hopefully we're going to have a bigger show. Hopefully we're going to have a lot of people there we didn't have before, but we had a good crowd of, what did I say, 40-something one day and 40-something the second. We're going to do 3 nights this time. So it'll be a little bigger.
Maybe as much as 50.
Yeah, it'll be a little bigger, a little better. We're going to have a lot more room. So I'm really excited. Big GeekCon Dice Tales is in Saginaw, Michigan on September 20th to 22nd. It's only $30, dude. Now
for the whole shebang.
But you got to get a hotel room, which is not cheap. And they are available. Where are they available at, Joe?
They are available at a ticket selling place. Hold on a second.
Tabletop, right? Events?
Yeah, tabletop.events. Mm-hmm. And I will have the link posted in the show notes.
It is Big GeekCon 2024. I call it 2. Joe labeled it as 2024. Oh, you're in California. Dude.
I'm sorry.
Dice Tales. I tell you what, buddy, check out Calvin Vanoni. What's Cal's last name? Cal Vanoni. Yeah.
I think
Cal
so.
Vanoni.
Yeah.
He's in California. You guys could carpool. Yeah, homie, Mac Thompson's coming. So it's going to be, dude, we got a bunch of people up here in Michigan's coming. Everybody should come join us. We'll play games. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to run Dungeons and Delvers by David Gwill. I'm going to run Horde Wars. I'm going to run my mouth. It's going to be awesome. What's new, right, Joseph?
It will be.
All right. Joe knows all the places you can.
Just a second.
Oh, Joe's up.
The link.
He's linking you guys. Get ready.
Here.
Cal Vanoni. I was just saying, Cal Vanoni's another guy that shows up periodically. He's in California. You'll see him on all the different podcasts that kind of, believe like we do and land in the same rough corner of the hobby. So, look at that. Blackwall Games going to be present as a vendor. We're actually going to have a vendor. We got to talk details with him though. And I don't know. Cal's a pretty chill dude, Dice Tales. I bet he'd be all right with it. I know it's tough, man. That's a tough ask, but
do you have gas? Maybe it's probably gas.
You would be welcome, Dice Tales, if you could make it, but I understand. Saginaw is a tough trip from California, Stan. So
yeah, I mean, even though it's only $30, if money's tight for everybody.
Dude, plane tickets and a hotel.
Plane ticket, hotel room, food.
Mm-hmm.
That's nothing in comparison to the price to enter.
Right.
However, it'll be your best 3 days of gaming.
Yeah. Gen Con's going to have nothing on Big Geek Con.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, you ready to bug out of here?
I am.
Joe's got it ready. All right, guys. Well, this is Randy.
And this is Joe.
And remember, you can't be big like us. Be geeks like us.